welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be doing a story time video. I haven't done one in a while. This is gonna be a story time about the last time that I went to Miami. Miami is notorious for being a crazy girls trip location, and it in fact was. So let's start getting ready. First, gonna use the Fig One Vitamin C Serum. I got this for free at an event and I actually really like it a lot. It gave me the full-size product. I was so happy about it. It's spring break and I wanted to get out of Delaware, so I hit up my friend and I was like, hey, can I come visit you in Miami for the week? And she was like, yeah, no problem, you can come. I went with the intention of writing a research paper. So I had just finished data and I was like, I'm just gonna write during spring break by a pool in Miami, sip some margaritas and have a great time. I booked this flight to leave on Monday morning at 6 a.m. First mistake I made was I used Spirit, and Spirit had like a $30 flight or something, and I honestly paid more for my luggage than I did for the flight. Yeah, that was the first mistake. The second mistake was I didn't get to the airport on time. I had never missed a flight up until this day, but my plan was I was going to drive to a friend's house, drop off my car, get in an Uber, take an Uber to the airport. That way I wouldn't pay for airport parking for the entire week. And then I would just get on my flight. Well, I get to her house as planned and I call an Uber. And the Uber is like, oh, on the way. 5 minutes before the Uber's supposed to show up, it cancels. So, okay, I call another Uber. Same thing happens. I call a Lyft. Same thing happens. It gets to a point where I am 45 minutes away from having to be at the airport and I can't get in contact with anyone. I eventually just called a taxi. And the taxi service was like, oh yeah, we'll send someone to you right away. They sent me this guy who just had zero sense of urgency. He did not care that I was gonna be late for my flight. He was like, whatever. It took him about 30 minutes to get me to the airport when I was only 15 minutes away from the airport. So that's how it was going. And it was also at 5 a.m. because again, my flight was at 6. Finally showed up to the airport and again, I checked luggage, which I never check luggage anymore because of this story. I just use the Bioma moisturizing gel cream. I don't really know if I like gels for moisturizers, but I've been trying them out, you know, just to see if I like them. So I did try it out today. I get to the airport and Spirit Airlines is being Spirit Airlines, as they are. I do have TSA pre-check, but I still had to check my bag, and it was about 20 minutes from takeoff, not boarding, takeoff. I'm in line at the check-in and they were like, oh yeah, honey, you're not making that flight. And I was like, oh, perfect, thank you. I'm now in line trying to figure out what flight I can get on because I'm like, I'm not going back home. I'm going to Florida. I just don't know how I'm gonna get there. I'm talking to the employee and she's like, we can just get you on the flight to Fort Lauderdale. It leaves in 40 minutes. I was like, okay, fine, put me on that flight. And they were like, all right, it's gonna be an additional $100 to get you onto this new flight. You know what? I don't care because I'm about to be late to this flight. So here, take my credit card, whatever. They put me on that flight. I go to my gate. At the gate, there is this woman who is fighting with the gate attendant. I don't know why, but this woman wanted to jump the line every time they called a new boarding group. They would say, boarding group 2, you can now board the flight. And she would run to the front and they were like, ma'am, you're boarding group 6, like you need to wait until your group number is called. But every single time she would run to the front, and finally they called her group. She ran to the front and they were like, you need to get in line. You need to get in line. They actually ended up kicking her off the flight before she even got on. She didn't even walk down the runway. She literally had gotten kicked off the flight. At the gate, everyone else is complaining and yelling or whatever because they called security to take this woman away. And because they called security and had to do all this other stuff, we couldn't actually get on the flight. So we finally board. Flight takes off. I end up having a full row to myself, which I was like, okay, there is a positive side to this. Now, I do text my friend and I'm like, hey girl, missed my flight, but I will be there today, just don't know when. So I land in Fort Lauderdale and I'm trying to figure out like how I'm gonna get to Miami. And by the time I got off my flight, she had texted me and was like, oh, you should take this bus, it'll take you here, blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to figure out my transportation. Turns out the bus was gonna be way more expensive and way more time consuming than me to just get an Uber. So I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna buy an Uber. Today I'm gonna go in with my e.l.f. foundation. This is my tried and true. I don't care if she only costs $6. I'm gonna keep buying it. I'm gonna keep using it. So we're using her today, but first I'm going to put on my Rare Beauty primer. I actually have been really loving this. I've been using it for I think 3 weeks now, and she's pretty good. I like her a lot. My Uber arrives. I get in the Uber, and I am not really a talker when it comes to Uber rides. I tend to just sit in the back seat and not say a single thing, but this Uber driver really wanted to talk. So I was like, okay, we're gonna have a conversation. She's asking me questions, and he's like, oh, I don't normally go to Miami, but you seem like you're not really in the partying crowd, so it's fine with me. And I was like, okay, woman. She ends up telling me that she has been an Uber driver for a few years, but she thinks that she's not gonna be an Uber driver anymore because her documentary is about to come out. Now, this totally took me for a loop. Remind you, it is 8 a.m. I haven't even had any breakfast yet, but this woman's telling me about her documentary. I was like, okay, what's your documentary about? She was like, actually, I had an entire production crew to film it for Ion, the channel, and they were filming my story because I am a domestic violence survivor. And I was like, sorry, what? And she was like, yeah, my girlfriend, I'm not gonna say the words, I don't know if YouTube is gonna block me, but, and I almost was unalived. I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, she hit a few times actually, and she was actually really close to my spine, and I actually lost the ability to walk and had to learn how to re-walk again. At this point, I'm in the back seat like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? She starts telling me about her relationship with this woman, and she was like, yeah, we started dating, and she has a son, and like I took her and the son in, and you know, we lived together. She told me that she wanted to go to school, but she never actually like made any attempts to, but I was in school. I was really like helping her out, and we were like trying to start our life together, but we would always get into these really intense arguments until one day she actually, you know, attacked me. And I was like, well, what happened after that? And she's like, well, I was in the hospital for a few months, and then COVID hit. So even though I was okay to go home, I couldn't actually go home because of COVID. And then I lost my job because I was in the hospital for so long that ended up firing me. So I'm in a lawsuit against them because that's wrongful termination. And she was like, yeah, I had to take PT and had to learn how to walk, but I also had to drop out of school because I couldn't walk, I couldn't work, I couldn't really do anything for myself. And she said, but when I did officially learn how to walk again, that's when I started Ubering. By this point, y'all, I was eating popcorn in the back seat. I was like, oh my gosh, and then what happened? And she was like, also while I was in the hospital, my ex's mom stole from me. She took money from my wallet and from my bank accounts while I was in the hospital. I didn't have any money. And she was like, so I sued them, and I am now in a lawsuit with them as well. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so many lawsuits. I just went in my Fenty Beauty Espresso concealer. So she was like, yeah, and then they also countersued me and tried to say that I stole some of their stuff when I moved out. And I was like, this is just so crazy. I was now so interested, and I'm like, all right, what is it like to be filmed for a documentary? Like, I've never met anyone who's had that experience. She's like, it was actually really invasive because they recorded every part of my life, and they wanted to talk about every part of my familial background and like how I ended up in a domestic violence relationship. It's like, but they ended up filming for about 8 months, and the documentary is gonna come out next week. And she's like, so I've been telling everyone that I'm driving because, you know, I just want you to go on and watch it. Now, I don't remember the name of the documentary. I am so sorry, but I do know that it's on Ion and is about a woman who is a domestic violence survivor. But there is a positive to the story. She was like, yeah, with the documentary, I'm hoping that I can get to people who need to hear my story and or who also may need help because I'm trying to start an organization for domestic violence survivors and victims. And I also want to work in it someday, but I'm back in school and I'm studying criminology. And she was doing fantastic, and I was like so happy for this woman. I was like, wow, this is incredible. She drops me off at the apartment. It was a 30-minute ride in total. We got through a lot. She drops me off at my friend's apartment, and I am beat by the time I get to her apartment. My friend has a bunch of cats. Me and the cats took a nap together, and I was like, okay, I actually need to get something to eat because I hadn't eaten all day at this point. My friend was actually at work this whole time, so I was like, I'll just go down the street to the Whole Foods and grab some snacks a week because I'm gonna be here for a bit and I want to be able to eat, you know, some yummy snacks. I walked to Whole Foods, and if you know me, then you know that I really don't cook a lot. I also am really stressed by the grocery store, so I get around that is to order HelloFresh and like any food delivery service I will order, because cooking and shopping for food makes me so stressed out. I cannot explain why. It's the worst part of my week. I try to keep it at a minimum. I try to be in and out, but it's something that really stresses me out. So this was my first time in a grocery store in probably like a month. And of course it was a new grocery store to me because one, I don't shop at Whole Foods, and two, I had never been to this specific Whole Foods, so I didn't know where anything was in the store. I am aimlessly walking around the store and I'm just like trying to figure out where everything is, and like Whole Foods has a ton of different brands that I'm not familiar with, so again, I'm lost in this store. And I end up doing 2 laps around the store when really I was just looking for like popcorn and Cheez-Its and like goldfish and some gummy bears or something. Whole Foods doesn't have those things, by the way, but I was looking, and this guy comes up to me, this light-skinned bald guy, and he's really tall. He's like, has anyone ever told you that you like Nia Long? I was like, yeah, I get that all the time. Like, people say that to me all the time. Thanks, dude. I just keep walking, and he was like, well, no, you seem like a little lost, like, can I help you with something? Like, what are you looking for? I was like, oh, I'm actually really stressed about our grocery stores, really don't like cooking, so I'm just here looking for like some popcorn or, you know, some Cheez-Its, something like that. He goes, oh, well, I'm actually a private chef, like I can help you shop for food if you need to. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I kind of really want salmon for dinner tonight. Like, what would go well with salmon? Me and this man go around this Whole Foods for an hour shopping so that he can give me ingredients that he originally wanted to cook in my friend's apartment. I told him no, but that he would help describe and teach me how to cook via a text message. We're shopping around the Whole Foods, and as we're shopping, he's like, yeah, I am a chef at the Ritz-Carlton in South Beach. I also have private clients that I work for, so I'm shopping for right now because I have to buy food for their meals for the week. Like, oh wow, that's so interesting. So, you know, we're just like talking about food and like how he got started in being a private chef. He goes, yeah, so do you want to go out for drinks this week? Like, how long are you in town? I was like, oh, you know, I'm here with my friend. We already have like our own plans, you know. I did not want to go out with this guy. I did not want to go out with this guy. First of all, I think he was probably the age of my father. He almost did look like my dad too. Yeah, it's a little bit awkward. I wasn't trying to go out with him, but I really did want him to buy my groceries, which he did not. And I was very, very disappointed, and that's where the story takes a turn. We get in line. For one thing, people in warmer locations tend to have animals in stores. Like, they will bring dogs into like different stores. I don't mind it. A lot of people hate it. He was one of those people that hated it. He was like, oh my gosh, I hate dogs. Like, I don't hate when people bring dogs into stores, into public places. I was like, okay, that's strike one, because I love dogs. So no, dude. Also, the fact that you're probably twice my age. Most people probably don't care, but I'm not one of those people. I actually really do care. So no, thank you, sir. Let me get to the register, and he's like, okay, have a great day. And again, leaves me to buy these groceries. The groceries, y'all, for salmon, white asparagus, and rice, plus with some seasonings sprinkled in there, cost me $130. I was so upset. I almost returned all that food. I was so upset because I had already paid $100 to get my flight rebooked. Then I paid another $100 when I only walked in there for popcorn. I left the store. I did give him my number so he could tell me how to cook the food, and I went home and started cooking. My friend comes home. She's like, hey girl, how was your day? And I was like, you will never guess what happened. This day was wild. I started telling her what happened while I'm cooking this food in her apartment. And she was like, well, are you gonna go out with him? And I was like, no, not. And just at that moment, this man calls me. That's how you know he was older, because older people will call you and not text you. I need a preemptive text to be like, I'm gonna call you in 5 minutes, so that I'm prepared for a phone call. But this man just called me out of the blue. Well, of course I denied it. And he texts me and he's like, let's go out for drinks. And I'm like, no thanks. I'm super tired from traveling today. I had a very, very long day. I was up at 3 a.m. this day. I'm just really not interested in going. And he was like, okay. Following days after that, this man proceeds to call me Again, no preemptive text. He would call me and then he would text me and be like, oh, let's go out to here, let's go here, let's go here. And every single time I said no. Every time I said no. But he wasn't really like catching on to what was happening. It got a little awkward. This is where I learned a very important lesson about blocking people. Because as the week is going on, you know, I'm hanging out with my friends, we're having a great time, we're going out to eat, we're going to Taco Tuesday, we're getting margaritas. Like, it was a really great week. He just keeps trying to call me. So my friend's like, just block him. I'm like, okay, great. Blocked him on my phone. Somehow his messages kept popping up on my laptop. I'm like, what is going on? Apparently with Apple, if you block someone on your phone, you have to block them on every other device that your phone is connected to. So I had to block this man on my phone, on my computer, on my iPad, and at one point it actually was still going through to my watch. I'm like, I don't know, but I got too many Apple devices for this. This is just too much. It was a very crazy day to start out my trip to Miami, and one of the main reasons why I have zero desire to go back to Miami anytime soon. To be clear, Miami is not a bad place. It's really not at all. I love it. I love the beach. I love the culture. I love the foods. There's so much to do in Miami, but I won't be back there. No, thank you. That is the story of the last time I went to Miami. I hope you guys really enjoyed this story time. I used the NYX lingerie in the color Going Desnuda, and then I am going to do my final little sweep with the One Size setting spray. I am all done. So thank you for tuning in for this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.